In the upcoming clip, Noam Chomsky is asked about legitimacy. Chomsky generally views authority with skepticism. He believes the burden of proof lies with those in power to justify their legitimacy, not the responsibility of the public to simply accept. Now, off to this important clip of Noam Chomsky, and following more key points on legitimacy.
And who engineers this? Who pulls this off? Who are the mandarins that, perhaps as in Gramsci's term, the experts in legitimation?
Yeah.
Who are these people?
Well, the experts in legitimation, the ones who labor to make what people in power do legitimate, is mainly the privileged, educated elites. The journalists, the academics, the teachers, and the public relations specialists. This whole category of people have a kind of an institutional task, and that is to create the system of beliefs which will ensure the effective engineering of consent. And again, the more sophisticated of them say that. In the academic social sciences, for example, there's quite a tradition explaining the necessity for the engineering of democratic consent. There are very few critics of this position. There are a few. There's a well-known social scientist named Robert Dahl who's criticized this. I think he's at Yale, or was when he wrote about it. And he pointed out, as is obviously true, that if you have a political system in which you sort of plug in the options from a privileged position, and if that's democracy, it's indistinguishable from totalitarianism. But it's very rare that people point that out. In the public relations industry, which is a major industry in the United States and has been for a long time, 60 years or more, this is very well understood, and in fact that's their purpose. That's one of the reasons this is such a heavily polled society, so that business can keep its finger on the popular pulse and recognize that if attitudes have to be changed, we better work on it. And that's what public relations are for. Very conscious, very well understood. When you get to what these guys call the institutions responsible for the indoctrination of the young, the schools and the universities, at that point it becomes a little bit more subtle. I mean, by and large, in the schools and the universities, people believe they're telling the truth. And the way that works is, with, again, rare exceptions, you cannot make it through these institutions unless you've accepted the indoctrination. You're kind of weeded out along the way. Independent thinking is encouraged in the sciences, but discouraged in these areas. And if people do it, they're weeded out as radical or something wrong with them. No, it doesn't have to work to 100%. In fact, it's even better for the system if there's a few exceptions here and there, which gives the illusion of debate or freedom. But overwhelmingly, this works. In the media, it's still more obvious. The media, after all, are corporations, major corporations, some of the major corporations in the country. The people who own them and manage them belong to the same narrow elite of owners and managers who control the private economy and who control the state. So there's a very narrow nexus of corporate media and state managers and owners. They share the same perceptions, the same understanding, and so on. So at the top level, and further, that's one major point. So naturally, they're going to perceive issues, suppress and control and shape in the interests of the groups that they represent. Ultimately, the interests of private ownership of the economy. That's where it's really based. Now, furthermore, the media also have a market. The market is advertisers. It's not the public. People have to buy newspapers, but the reason is because otherwise advertisers won't advertise there. So the newspapers are designed so that the public will buy them, so that they can raise their advertising rates. But the newspapers are essentially being sold to advertisers via the public, which is part of the medium for selling newspapers to advertisers. Now since the corporation is selling it and its market is corporations, that's another respect in which the corporate system or the business system generally is going to be able to control the content of the media. In other words, if by some unimaginable accident they began to get out of line, advertising would fall, and that's a constraint. When you get down to the level of the state power has the same effect. I mean, the media want to maintain their intimate relation to state power. Like they want to be invited to, they want to get leaks, they want to be invited to the press conferences, they want to rub shoulders with the Secretary of State, all this kind of business. And to do that, you've got to play the game. And playing the game means telling their lies, serving as their disinformation apparatus. So quite apart from the fact that they're going to do it anyway out of their own interest and their own status in the society, there are these kinds of pressures that force them into it. It's a very narrow system of control, ultimately. Then comes the question of the individual journalist. You know, a young kid decides, I'm going to be an honest journalist. Well, you try. You're pretty soon informed by your editor that, you know, you're a little off base. I mean, you're getting too emotional, you know, you're too involved in the story, you got to be more objective. There's a whole pile of code words for this. And what those code words mean is get in line, buddy, or you're out, you know. Get in line means follow the party line. And then what happens is a number of things. One thing that happens is people drop out. But those who decide to conform, either they just, usually what happens is that they just begin to believe what they're saying. I mean, in order to progress, you have to believe certain things. You have to say certain things. You have to say what the editor what the copy editor wants, or what the top editor is getting back to you. And you could try saying it and not believing it, but that's not going to work. People just aren't that dishonest. You can't live with that. I mean, a very rare person can do that. So you start saying it, and then you believe it because you're saying it. And pretty soon you're inside the system. Furthermore, there are plenty of rewards if you stay inside. For people who play the game by the rules in a rich society like this, there are ample rewards. You're well off, you know, you're privileged, you're rich, you have prestige, you have a share of power if you want. If you like this kind of stuff, you can go off and become the State Department spokesman on something or other. I mean, you're right at the middle of the, you know, you're right near the center of at least privilege, sometimes power, in the richest, most powerful country in the world. And you can go far as long as you're very obedient and subservient and disciplined. So there are many factors, and people who are more independent are just going to drop off or be kicked out. In this case, there are almost no exceptions. I mean, it's very hard to find. I mean, the degree of control on this is astonishing. Now, let me just give you one example, a current example. Recently, last March '86, came the major vote on Contra aid. Now, for the 3 months prior to that, the administration was heating up the atmosphere to try to reverse the congressional restrictions on aid to the terrorist army that's attacking Nicaragua, what they internally call a proxy army, proxy terrorist army attacking Nicaragua, which is, of course, what it is.
Ideal authority, according to Chomsky, derives its legitimacy from the consent of the governed. This means decisions should reflect the will of the people and serve their interests. Chomsky argues that power dynamics can undermine legitimacy. He critiques the influence of wealthy elites and special interests on policymaking, suggesting this reduces the public's voice and weakens the legitimacy of such policies. Chomsky avoids sweeping pronouncements. He argues that the question of legitimacy depends on the specific context. For example, he has acknowledged the potential justification for violence under extreme circumstances, emphasizing the need to weigh the consequences against a greater evil. Chomsky has been a vocal critic of U.S. foreign policy, arguing that interventions and actions abroad often lack legitimacy due to their self-serving nature and disregard for international law. Well, I hope you liked the video and give the channel a subscribe. If you wish, you can join the channel as a member, that would be greatly appreciated. Also, if you would check out my other channel, Progressive Movement, link is on the homepage and in the comments section. Thank you. Now, take care and bye-bye.